Welcome back to episode 2 of the Home Truths podcast. So we're ripping off that plaster and exposing the truths behind all things business, success, wealth, relationships, love, spirituality, healing, trauma, and why are we doing that? In the pursuit of the truth, because the truth is the only thing that will set you free. I'm Anastasia, and I'm here with my sometimes better half, Max.
How's it going? Welcome back to episode 2. We've got a juicy subject for you today, and we're going to get into it.
Yeah, so we're today exploring the topic of more and why that won't bring you happiness. Now, what do I mean, or what do we mean by more? We mean more money, more assets, more houses, more cars, more girls, more drugs, more drink, more sadness. Now, we speak that from experience, having done it ourselves. Now, something we've been working on a lot recently is kind of delving back into that less is more. So in the pursuit of the more stuff that I just named here, you actually end up in a position where you're less of the stuff that we actually really, really need in our core, in our souls as humans. Things like space, freedom, time, love, joy. And that's something we've been actively working on, which is why you're going to see this today being discussed. One of the kind of outcomes that have come about of us working on this for years is we've most recently reduced our outgoings by about £3,000 a month. Now, that wasn't an easy decision in itself, but is kind of as a cherry on kind of the top of a big cake of work that we've done to get there. And it's something we've done in order to pursue less, having had more. And so we're going to delve right in and kind of start talking about that and our own journeys and how we've got there. So, Max, over to you. Tell our listeners things that we've been doing recently.
Yeah, so I kind of just to set off the tone of the podcast. We're typically sold in Western society or our current society that more is better, bigger is better, more stuff, more cars, more houses, more money, more than anything is the channel to happiness.
The measure of success sometimes as well, right?
And it's the only way you can be happy. So you have to have all this stuff, otherwise you won't be happy. And it's just not true. In fact, core happiness has nothing to do with money or finances, cars, girls, drugs. They can all make you feel good, but it's short-lived. And you often find on the back of that, you're actually then just chasing the dragon. You want more. You want the next car, the next house, the next promotion, the next bigger holiday, whatever it may be. It's to sort of fill that void that's inside of people, or inside of us, that we think, well, if I get more of this thing or I do more of these things, I'll be happy.
We've discussed before, haven't we, how we say this, the ripping off the plaster as part of the Home Truths podcast, but actually I know from my experience that the stuff, the things, the outward facing things was actually just a mask for things internally that I was missing. So, for example, one of the biggest things I know now to be true is it could be like your partner, your intimate partner. Now, if you are not happy with them, or you haven't got this peace or this connection and this free-flowing freedom in your relationship, then sometimes we think, well, I'll just layer on stuff. So I will layer on that holiday. I will layer on that car. I will layer on that thing we can go and do because we haven't really got much else in the background. I can layer on some more money. And this constant goal actually keeps you on this hamster wheel. So then you don't realise all this other stuff around you that you're like, it's actually really quiet and quite... you said to me before, when you kind of sit and you realise how quiet it is, because you're like, there's nothing really here.
Can,
there's nothing here. You can feel it.
The silence is deafening.
That's it. That's what you say.
And it's those times that you may go on a holiday, go for a nice meal, buy the nice house or buy the nice car, whatever it may be. The anticipation of that event is usually way better than the event itself. So you think, okay, we're gonna have a great day today, we're gonna go get a car, then we're gonna go celebrate with a meal. You get the car, you drive the car, it's just the car. You're like, okay, but it's a nice car. You sit down for a meal and you still have nothing to talk about. You're like, oh.
And that's
I need more. Maybe I need to get another car. Maybe
the champagne wasn't a big enough bottle.
Yeah, maybe we need to just be around more people, or maybe we need to do whatever it may be. It's another excuse for what's staring you in the face. And I think that's an easy way to sort of sum it up for a lot of
Start
people.
with, yeah,
It's
say
just
that.
it's a mask. We'll just cover it up.
Yeah.
I'll do more stuff. I'll do more things, and I won't have to think about that problem.
Well, with the partner topic, as you said with dinner, for example, that's a really good example that we've both experienced and spoken about, where it's like, go for this lush dinner, get this bottle of this, do that, and actually, like you said, if that connection or intimacy, by the way, these is what the core human values are that we just spoke about at the start. So that would I say is core for our happiness. As humans, we need connection, we need love. Now you try and mask that by going for this dinner and being like, we'll have this, we'll do that, and yeah, life's good. But sometimes that silence there when you're sat there and you're like, actually, if we strip this away, I don't think I'd have anything to say to you. I don't think I'd have that connection, that love, which is a fundamental for human connection. Now, once you maybe, this is obviously just one example of this modem that we're going to talk about, but in that relationship, say you then do meet someone who, now like you and I, where we can just talk like this, I don't care whether I'm eating out of a tin of baked beans because I haven't got to mask it or layer it with other stuff to make our company bearable. And it's not that you're even aware that it's unbearable, by the way. You're layering it with stuff and things, and that's a epitome of life.
We like going for nice food and drinking.
Yeah, it's not like we just don't do anything all the time.
Do that,
yeah,
of course, but it's more that if the thing that you're doing is trying to, or you're engineer it to distract you away from a deeper problem, of which everybody knows. I personally believe you don't just not know. There'll be times that you might be unaware, but you will feel it in certain scenarios and you think that's painful, I don't want to look at that. And that's what we're talking about. It's not a specific scenario that the car or the house or the holiday or the fancy meal or the clothes that you buy or shopping that you do. It's all of those in moderation can be fine and are healthy, and obviously you're perfectly entitled to celebrate and do nice things. But when you haven't got the other side of it, and you're just basically deeply unhappy, then you need to listen to that.
I don't even know though. Again, if it's like a conscious thing again, like, so I think a lot of people listening to this be like, well, I am happy, and I think I encourage you at this moment when you hear me say that, just to keep listening and delve a bit deeper into what we're saying. I never remember being like, I mean, there were times definitely, to be fair, where I'm like, I'm not happy, but it's not like a conscious theme of my life that I was unhappy. So that's why I pursued, and then let's, relate it back to ourselves. But for me, pursuing a career in law, now I learn my business is a 7-figure business, which is where we've got to in this journey, where we're talking from a place of having it. So we've had the money, we've had the car, we've had the 2 cars, we've had the flash cars, we've had the flash house. Our house is in an area called the Millionaire's Playground. It's one of the most wealthiest areas in the whole UK. So my point is, I don't remember being like, I'm so miserable and all I've got is the pursuit of money. I don't think that's a conscious decision or awareness necessarily. But what I'm getting at is, or what we're then getting at is, in amongst that is that you can't tell someone and then take your word for it that you will get that stuff and then realize it wasn't as good as you thought it was going to be. And it doesn't necessarily be like, because you're miserable, we're telling you when you get it. You don't even know sometimes. You just get that stuff because that's what we're, as you said at the start, that's what we're taught to pursue. You get it and you're like, oh, all of that for this feeling that's just worn off. And then I'm back to the relationship I don't really care about, the friends that I'm not that connected with, and my day-to-day life that actually I don't really that fucking enjoy that much. So that's the end of that Lambo. Well, and what's the point?
Well, yeah, and obviously it's a deeply complicated question that we're asking, because it's the main question for everyone. It's like, how do I get happy? And obviously there's a million different modes or vessels that can facilitate what we would call like growth in that direction. But something we discussed before the podcast was, it doesn't matter what we say, these people watching, whoever individually, you're going to have to experience it to really understand. And there's no shortcut for experience. And as the older I get, like, you just have to start asking the right questions. This is how I started this journey, say 3 or 4 years ago, is listen to podcasts like this or other lectures, like university lectures, and you start to think about like deeper questions. Start to ask yourself, like, what do I actually enjoy doing? Like, what do I actually love doing? Like, what makes me want to get up in the morning at 5 a.m. and do this thing? Because I can almost guarantee that most people in their day-to-day lives, there's a lot of things you do that you don't enjoy. So there has to be a worthwhile pursuit to make you suffer the harder times in life.
Just to touch on that 5 a.m. point, because I think some people will go, oh, and wince at that comment. By the way, I'm not talking about getting up at 5 a.m. to go and do ice baths or go and start that business. I know from obviously being with you, Max, that your 5 a.m. is getting up to go fishing. No one's telling him he has to get up, and I'm not talking about 5 a.m. club because he wants to, right? So that's, again, just to kind of caveat that, because I know some people are like, oh God, you're about to start talking to me about how I need to get up at 5 a.m. I don't like getting up early, so it's not my thing. But like you will love getting up to go fishing. And then also touching on the fact that you said, you can't tell these people. Funnily enough, as you get older, you realise your mum and dad were right about things. My mum said to me the other day, again, through Isla, the business and its growth and its rapid growth and the income that I'd always dreamed of having, I just said to her, I've gone a lot of it recently of being like, I just don't think I want this. And this isn't, not that I want Isla. I don't want to be consumed by it all the time, which can happen, and consumed by the wealth, by the way. So, we'll carry on getting into that. But my mum said to me, she was like, darling, if I told you this, you would never have listened to me.
Yeah.
You had to go and live on the wealthiest road in the UK. You had to drive that car. You had to, because you had an incessant drive within you. You had to start your own law firm, prove everybody wrong, set up the business, make it a 7-figure business, take home, multiple hundreds of £1,000s a year in your own income to work out.
It was never about
it. It doesn't really fucking make me that happy.
Yeah.
If anything, and obviously
it makes it worse sometimes.
It makes it worse. Because then you don't. Then it's like someone else said to me. Shout out to my friend Soph. She said to me, the new level, new devil, and that's also true. So but you have to go through it all to feel it.
It doesn't matter what anybody says. It really doesn't, and like that's the irony of life, or I say a lot that life works in paradoxes.
You do, yeah,
and it does, because you have this destination. It's like through rose-tinted glasses. You get to said destination, you realize it wasn't what you thought, and it encompasses a lot more problems that you didn't anticipate. And that happens at every single level.
You wish maybe for a life more simpler that you once had,
but ironically, again, which is a paradox itself, you can't attain a simpler life until you've done the hard thing.
Well, because you're forever thinking you want that thing.
You would want a simpler life. So this is what I mean. It works in like these.
And then the paradox as well of wanting more is you want more money, more cars, more this, more that. So the more, and as you get more of that, it reduces. It gives you less freedom, peace. And I know people will say, but Anastasia, we all say money is in the pursuit of freedom. Again, I'll get onto that in a second. Why that's kind of right. So it gives you less freedom, peace, security, possibly. So then you start working out this, again, it's the paradox movement. And then you think, well, actually, for me to get back those things, I have to reshift it. And again, to explain this point of, well, but Anastasia, money does give you freedom and money does give you this security. Yeah, good. So I'm glad someone will be thinking that. Because you're right. But again, to give you real life examples, because this is the home truths, and I'm not here to then tell you things, but you're thinking, you're not telling me something about you. So for me personally, looking at our reductions recently of £3,000 a month, I wasn't living on the breadline, by the way, either. We weren't maxing out our monthly outgoings. I could still invest. Sometimes I was investing £5,000 a month, sometimes maybe two, sometimes maybe nothing. But we could cover our bills, and with these 2 cars and the house and the lifestyle. And sometimes, as they say, still having £5,000 to invest. You'd think, Anastasia, what was the fucking problem then? Why have you now reduced it by £3,000? So our monthly outgoings were sitting around 5,500, say. Now reduced by about about 6.5. So now reduced by another 3,000. But why did you do that then if you already had the money and the freedom? Well, because I'm telling you now, it's like the ironic thing about humanity is you must do it. I must make that money every month. And when we're told we must, particularly for me, I don't really like being told I must do something. So you must make that money every month. You must make at least, 6.5 to cover the bills, say, plus tax. So you need to make at least 10 grand a month, plus maybe 15 so you can invest. I don't want to have to make £15,000 a month. If sometimes I make £30,000 a month, bloody brilliant. If my outgoings are only 3,000, that means by my maths, 10% of my
Yeah.
outgoings as my income. That was why, because the point was, it's not that you couldn't, it was that, why do I want that on my shoulders every month? Because all that meant is I just lived in this perpetual state of being like, I have to do this. And I didn't want to. And then it comes back to, do I want to? Do I want to have to make that much money every month? And then, you start facilitating this lifestyle where actually, because you're working to pay for that car, to pay for that house, then also bearing in mind, what if you lost it all tomorrow? And I don't live in a state of fear. I live in a state of abundance, and that we're going to keep growing and living and enjoying life. But that's also something to bear in mind. If it got taken away from you tomorrow and you thought, God, but that was everything to me, those cars and those houses, and that's all I really had, and that's what we worked for. We worked for those cars and houses instead of spending the time working on us and love and connection. You've really lost it all then, haven't you? Because you didn't spend the time doing the other things that really mattered.
Ironically as well, even if you're living above or within your means, but marginally, your mind actually does regress into a state of panic anyway, and you do actually create and capitalize on less opportunities because of that. If you're living well below your means, and this could be applied for anyone really, it doesn't matter where your earning bracket is. You basically need to live at like at least 50% below that. Now, for a lot of people, that's difficult. I understand, but if there are, I guarantee there are things that you are doing, either buying Costa coffees, eating takeouts, doing this, that you can affect. You can go away and reduce to get that extra income. But you have to want it as well. Like, and if you're not looking meticulously at your finances, that's why they're not in a good state.
Yeah, and I think important to, that's a really good point to bring that up about, that it can apply to anybody. But the reason why, again, if you're listening to this thinking, oh, Anastasia, you guys are talking about, I said the reason why I said 5.5, 6, because £1,000 of yours that we reduced and 2,000 of mine that we reduced. So I was then trying to do some quick maths on combining ours. But the reason why we're talking about these kind of bigger level figures isn't because this is meant to be a podcast on how kind of normal day-to-day income can be reduced. We're trying to explain to everybody really about how this big pursuit of the bigger ticket stuff, that once you get there, this is what it then feels like, because we've been there. And actually we then very quickly are trying to unwind it to be like, do you know what? I just want to live more simply. So, but again, we can sit here and tell you that and say, you say, yeah, but Anastasia, we're taking home £3,000 a month. That's our actual income, and our outgoings are 2.5, and we're really struggling. And so my pursuit is, I dream about the day when I'm earning £20,000 a month, and my business is a 7-figure business. The point of what we're trying to discuss here is that more isn't going. We assure you, it's not going to feel like what you think it's going to feel when you get there.
Yeah. So again, that probably brings me onto a good part of that conversation where we were speaking about earlier, is that I encourage people, to go out and buy the car of your dreams, if you can. Just go and get it. Go on that holiday as quickly as you can do it. Save for a year, buy the car you want. Save for a year, go on that holiday you want. Save for a year, buy that handbag from wherever, or buy those pair of shoes that are worth thousands. Like, get them and see how it makes you feel, because then it will give you some idea of how little it actually affects your happiness.
Yes.
And the quicker you can switch rails from pursuit of money, pursuit of these things and stuff, I think it's going to make me happy. Get them as soon as you can, because then you'll realise, you'll drive the car for a few months and think, well, it's just a car now. It was lush, and don't be wrong, like I wanted a BMW M4, for example, and I've wanted one for years, and I bought one about 8 months ago. I loved it, but it wasn't, again, I put it on this massive pedestal. It wasn't wasn't like I thought it would be. Like, but everything that I've experienced, that we've experienced, tells us the same answer.
Yeah.
It's more of, you idolize these things in your mind, thinking they're going to change your life and it's going to be the answer to all your problems. It just isn't.
No.
And ironically, the quicker you can get to that realization, the faster you can be in the pursuit of what really matters. And that's kind of what we're trying to say, and like give you real world examples about how our lives have been affected by it. But I, for example, had a lot of experience with people near retirement in my old job, in my old career. And I was working with guys that were in near retirement. And I won't go into a too complex story about it. But fundamentally, a lot of them were like, oh, can't wait. Got a couple of years to retirement. I'm going to get all this money. I'm going to buy the car I want. I'm going to go on a, nice holiday, go on a cruise with my wife and this, that, and the other. And out of the people that did retire, I saw a lot of them within a year go back to work. I saw a lot of them within a year not really know what to do. The ones that were successful are the ones that had hobbies and passions that they loved. And they were ready to do it for the rest of their life. One of the bosses that I had loved golf. He retired, disappeared off to Portugal, never to be seen again.
I guess you're saying if all your passion was your whole life was working for
stuff,
this end goal of either a pension if you're in... So when I say not, like, you're in the mindset of I work, I get my pension, or people maybe listening to this who, friends of ours who we know are growing their own businesses at exceptional rates, and so it's like once my business gets to here, I'll feel this, I feel that. In both those scenarios, when people get it, because all they've done is this thing to drive, to grow money, to succeed. Once you get it and you haven't got this other hobby or interest or passion or happiness within you, you're fucked. Because you're like, and then what we were talking about, can you imagine not working this out until you were 60? So again, a lot of our friends listening to this will be particularly in the property and finance market, who I know are trying to get like to this at age 30, 40. I'm only 32. And so I am blessed to have worked that out this young. But for others, you might not work it out until you're 60. Can you imagine getting there, getting the money, getting the car, and then being like, oh, fuck, it's not what I thought it was going to be. So I spent my whole life on this track. We spoke about tracks, didn't we, the other day? These two kind of tracks running side by side. This track that I thought would take me to the destination I wanted to go to. And I get there. It's not what I thought it was. It's game over. There isn't another go at this. Well, this is your one life. There's not another go at that. No. That's it. You spend your whole life doing it for what?
I use the example a lot in our conversations, but it's again, paradoxically in life, when there's time in front of you, when you're younger, your mind can easily go, well, I can always do that thing tomorrow, next week, next year, next month, whatever it may be. And that brings you some reassurance inside you there's time left. When there's no time left, you either have an illness or you get to the twilight years of your life and there's no more time to correct what you haven't done in your life. That is the true weight of regret. And that's something I'm so acutely aware of, that I've seen in people, that I've had read books, listened to podcasts, and it's a reoccurring theme. It's like, it's all okay until there's no time to correct it. So I urge everyone watching or in general to do as many things as you can. Experience new places to live, new jobs, new different hobbies. Get the things you're really passionate about. Buy that car, buy that holiday, do that thing, because you'll work a lot out off the back of it.
Yeah.
And there's no shortcut for that experience. Like, that's probably the best piece of advice we could give. Like, don't just sit there and wait for I'm just going to wait till I retire to do this stuff. I'm just going to wait to retire to go on my travels.
Or if it's not retiring, again, for people who I know who are growing the big business, I'm going to wait until my business gets a 7-figure business. And when I've done that, it's all going to be okay. And it's probably not. Or you're not working on the other things in the background. And we're talking about hobbies, but also there's that deeper kind of that spiritual, internal healing, growing, connecting, the things that are really important. And talking about hobbies, again, I am very guilty of this. It's a real life example. I don't think, obviously my spirituality is a massive part of my life, but it's not a hobby. It's a way of living. Practicing yoga is a practice. It's not a hobby. I can't do it all day. Like, you can go fishing all day. And so this is all very fresh in my mind, which is why I want to share it with people. And again, I'm no expert. We said at the start, we are still learning, but we're trying our best as we learn things, as we fuck up, as we fail, as we succeed. We're trying to be open, authentic, to actually help others. It's never from like a bragging platform or like, look what we worked out. Like, trust me, we have lost tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands between us by fucking up. And for me personally, I've pursued, got that business, nailed that spirituality, did that, and then I'm like, okay, well now what do I do? Because I don't want to keep growing Isla. As I said, I realized that's a new level, new devil, and I don't want to do it all the time. And then I was like, I don't actually have a hobby. So shout out to our friends at Everything Airbrush. They actually, yesterday, we were visiting them. And I've got, what they call, because I always say it wrong, what they called.
Warhammer.
I'm going to start doing Warhammer. I shit you not, okay? By the way, cool sexy girls can do Warhammer too, okay?
So, they might not play the games, but we can certainly paint them.
I was like, I don't have anything that I just sit for hours and do. And I'm really creative, and I like, whenever I've painted little things, I've really got like a little bit of a, oh, I really liked that. And because I've got quite a hectic mind, as some of you might tell from me talking, I thought, do you know what, like, have fun. And I love fantasy, like we love fantasy programs, films. So I was like, let's give this a go. And so I'm starting to explore that. So again, I'm not an expert. I'm not telling you, why haven't you got a hobby?
Still working out.
I'm still really working out. But what I can tell you is had the money, had the growth, had the success, had the pressure, had the nervous. I would say in the last few months, I've been teetering on like a nervous breakdown. Because I was like, I don't know why I'm doing this anymore. I've got the money and it's not making me happy. If anything, the ironic thing is, and this is when I started being like, who am I? Like, you'd have a month where like you take home 20 grand and that's in your dividends, and you pay your tax, you're left with 12 grand. Your bills was like, 6.5, 6, and you're going, there's not enough left. It's not enough. Can't do all the things I want to do. And you're like, Jesus, you need to have what is it you're trying to fill? Because if that's not enough, what's wrong with you? And it's because it would never have been enough if you weren't happy, because it's just more. Like, we talk about it, and real life example, probably many listeners can listen with, drugs, drink. It's more. Because once you get that one hit, you're like, well, that's run out, so I need more. And that's what started to happen with the money.
Well, it's like an endless void of you just shoveling your existence into when it comes to like materialistic pursuits, because
my car didn't feel as good anymore, so it was like more.
But there's always a category to move into. You have to remember, at the top of the chain, we're talking Bezos, Elon Musk sort of wealth. You will unlikely attain that, so there's always a ceiling.
Challenge.
There's always a ceiling to move into. There's always a bracket to move into. So if you bought that, BMW M4 probably worth like 24 grand. There's always a brand new one, and then there's always a Lambo, then there's always an Aston Martin, then there's always a Koenigsegg, and they just, what do you want? Then you want super yacht, then what, a jumbo jet, like it never ends. It never ever ends.
I think then what also is really important, we've spoken about the money, and then we've spoken about having hobbies. Now, really, none of that also really matters if you're not internally happy. Now, what do we mean by that? Then, wow, that's a big pursuit in itself, and a big question in itself. And also something that, by the way, we don't pretend to be experts at. Some days and weeks and months, I'm like, wow, my life is so imbalanced. And I don't mean balance as in perfect balance. I never agree with that. I mean more like free flowing, and I feel aligned. And other months, I'm like, what is this all about? So, it's not perfect, but happiness is very much both you and I experienced, and again, share, is like being in relationships where, my previous relationship, I'd say I just feel so lonely. I was surrounded by people all the time. My house was like Piccadilly Circus, people coming in, out, in, out, in, out. I was the center of the one who would organize everything, and I just was so lonely. And because if you're not seen, heard, or understood or valued by your partner and your friends, that also ain't going to help. So I don't know if we touched on this sort of thing in the herd mentality episode last month. So if you haven't listened to that, do listen to that. But
ironically, what happens as well when you're not in that a productive or safe environment, you go out of your way to try and show your worth, which then can basically come across in inflated versions of yourself, which aren't quite true to the real you, because you're just trying to be like, I exist, by the way.
So I'd also we from our relationship together, we've come to establish I probably have undiagnosed ADHD, which we're in the process of getting me diagnosed, but an explanation for a lot of my behaviors. But I also was only free and safe to explore that kind of neurodiversity in my brain by being with you, of being like, it's okay. And, it's okay that you behave in that way. But one of the things it would manifest into was a lot of spending. So again, talking about money and things and stuff. Jesus Christ, my spending habits were out of control. And I actually realized it was some sort of addiction. Like I would just buy stuff, hit, dopamine.
But opening
Now,
the
why
packages as well.
Oh, I love opening packages.
Yeah.
Next dopamine hit. Now, why do I want that dopamine hit? Well, when you start to become acutely aware of it, it's where wasn't I getting dopamine elsewhere? Like, I get such massive hits of dopamine from our conversations. Again, anyone listening thinks sometimes Max be talking and she just jumps in all excited. That is because I'm getting too excited and I can't control it. So that's that dopamine hit. I get that from talking to you. So you can, once you start working out who you are, and what is the drive behind your happiness, you can then also plug holes in your bucket. So we call it that, right? So if you have a leaky bucket, you can pour shitloads of money into it. You can pour the flash card, you can pour this into it. But if you've got holes in your bucket, because internally you have got holes, a hole where you don't feel loved, you're not seen, you're not valued, or you have your own internal issues that you're not addressing, your own addictions, your own self-worth issues, it's gonna fucking spew out everywhere. So you can make all the money in the world anyway, but it ain't gonna stay around with you very long because you're gonna lose it. I kept losing my money because I kept spending it all on shit. And if it wasn't shit, it was I think my Audi was like a £70,000 Audi. Who the hell needs a £70,000 Audi? It's because it was brand new Q5 special edition. And I just wanted the big dopamine hit of driving off the forecourt. And then after a while, I was like...
And then that cost X amount each month for the preceding many months afterwards.
Oh, yeah, shitloads of money. £900 a month, I think it was.
Yeah.
And again, talking about, oh, God, that's nuts for a car. It's relative. It wasn't that much compared to my income. But I was like, it just doesn't make me that happy. What makes me more happy is the time and space and freedom with you and my friends, and not the need to have to make that money if I don't want to. That's my point. Like, that's where the true freedom is, right?
Yes. And also it isn't just one big expenditure you have in your life if you're living your life that way. It's, I've got a car, a really flash car. I go for really flash meals. All my clothes are flash.
Yeah.
My holidays
Mine
are
weren't
flash.
even flash. They were just shit that I kept ordering from
Or
Shein.
en masse.
En masse. They're everywhere.
Or something. It isn't usually just one symptom. It affects your whole life. So actually, it isn't just one thing. Like on its own, if we didn't do anything else, the car would have been okay. But if it was, because with everything else, it's added on top and added on top.
Yeah, no, it would have been okay. You're right. But also, like, I just think...
I know in principle what we're saying is like, you have to then reduce all of it.
Well, because what we've discussed earlier, wasn't it, is how actually for us, it's like a domino effect. I can, like, vision in my head, I can see we flicked one end and it's going to... So I think it started with my car. So we got rid of that. So that's cut that. Good. Then it started with the house. And the house we're now moving from is, as I said, in Sandbanks, and where we're now moving to is in the middle of nowhere, quite some distance out from that, and the rent is £1,000 cheaper a month, and so that was the next change. Then it was cutting down other little things that we had, like little subscription plans. Now it was your car, the M4, that's gone. And you're like, God, people looking internally, by the way. And this is where also you have to let go of your ego. And I think this, again, comes from getting it and realising it's not that important. Some people, unfortunately, get trapped at the top, though, of their ego.
Well, I can't get rid of that because it looks like I've lost.
Because now people will be looking inward, must think, Jesus Christ, something really bad's happened to them. It hasn't. Something really good's happened to us. We found what inner peace and happiness is, and being like, I don't want to play this game anymore. And... actually, but if you got too much of a big ego, you'd be like, well, I can't get rid of that car and the house in Sandbanks and the M4 because people are going to look at us and be like, they've lost. Yeah. We haven't. And but I also don't care what they think.
You have to not. More importantly, you just have to distance yourself from those opinions, as in, like, in your mind, because ultimately, you know, you also have to remember that everybody has their own problems, and we forget this, that everybody actually is quite focused on themselves, and the what they do. What people do, what humans do, is the only way they can differentiate between themselves and another person is by seeing what the other person does and reflecting that inwards to see how they would behave. That's how we identify another human from ourselves. So when people are like looking over the fence and keeping up with the Joneses, it's like it's a combination of a lot of like complex psychology, herd mentality, and things like that we spoke about in the last episode, but it's it's very much how we base our own value around what other people are doing.
Yeah.
So to really look inwards, you basically close your eyes, and you have to forget or accept that everybody else's life around you doesn't matter. It
No.
does not matter. They're not going to be paying your bills. They're not going to be having a conversation with you over dinner. They're not going to be raising your children. They're not going to be looking after you when you're sick. So for you to forget about everybody else's opinion, because it honestly does not matter.
Well, I think for me as well, it was, you're spot on. It's forgetting everybody else's opinion and who actually really matters to you. So I think something lucky, it's taken years of really hard work. We're both very emotionally aware. And actually what mattered to me more was not inflicting pain on us. So through Isla earning what it earns me and the business doing so well, I was doing better than I could have imagined, but I was angry, stressed, crying, sobbing in your arms. I don't want to do this. What has it made me become? And what was more important to me was us. So I think when you find something above and more important than those things and those stuff, that can really challenge you to rethink it. Because for me, us and our opportunity just to be in love and to be happy and to be at peace is right there, and we have that. But it was being affected and impacted by my desire for more, and that when I got there and I was like, what even is the fucking point of me? What is my point? I've earned all this and I've done all this and I don't have any. I was lost slightly for a few months of being like, I don't know. And then then I look to you and think, I can't do this to you. I can't do this to us. And so I made a choice to be like, I'm going to start taking that all back, and said my income has stayed the same. So all I've done is just create more space.
Yeah, and ironically, the more space you create, the more opportunities you can capitalize on.
And you can live in this state of, if it comes to me, it comes to me, but I don't need it.
Yeah.
So as I said, it was like the, this feeling of now, you know what? I could probably live for 2 years now based on our income, based on our monthly outgoings. If I had disappeared off the face of the earth tomorrow,
we got more time to figure it out.
Yeah, I don't. And like any normal job could probably cover my overheads now. And that was really the realization for me. And I think, but so many people will get that flash card, get that house, get that thing, and we're feeling what we're feeling or we felt.
Yeah.
And do nothing about it. Now,
I
know so many people in the industry who have done that. I know so many people who are in the industry who, in fact, their money and their wealth is what's made them kind of cool now. So they're not going to relinquish that. There's so many people in the industry who, to be blunt, were massive nerds. And I don't mean that, I do mean that in a detrimental way. It's a horrible thing to say, but there we are, we're on the home truths. But they would probably, never got much attention. They probably spent their lives feeling quite inferior. So got some money. Now they got the girls, they got the cars, they got the status. They're not about to give that up, but to what detriment? For their wife, who's like, you're never fucking here. In fact, you embarrass me and show me up by the behaviour you exhibit when you're in places. You've now got to actually maintain this mansion, which, by the way, is all well and good whilst you have that 20, 30, 40 grand income a month. Cool. But I know that to be true, that there's a part of you that wonders if it's going to stay there forever, because anything external can always be taken away from you. The only thing that can't be taken away is what's internal. And then you might say, but Anastasia, a lot of property investors and developers probably will listen to this. When I talk about my industry, I mean property and finance. If I've got assets there and they're generating me passive income, so they like to say, of 20 grand a month, that can't be taken away from me. Fucking of course it can. I used to work in banking and finance scandals, and Jesus Christ, the bank would smash up these property investors and these portfolios all the time. I know many people who had it all and lost it all, not actually also through their own actions. So the point is not that you should live in a state of fear of losing it, but subconsciously your body knows that you've got to keep on going to sustain that, and that it knows that that's an external thing needed to fulfill and maintain the life you've got. But the only thing that really brings you peace is what's inside, which can't be taken away ever.
Yeah, and also you can calibrate your life to preserving the best possibility of that internal happiness being facilitated for the longest amount of time. So you don't need to put extra financial pressure on yourself that will basically undermine that internal happiness. Basically, the message is, if you can reduce the amount of financial pressure in your life to the minimum it can be, minimum tolerable for now, let's say that, then you have a chance of cultivating something actually important and actually truthful that can never be taken away. And in time, then you can really understand where your true balance lies. But I would encourage that the first thing to do is, if you haven't got there yet, keep going and get that thing that you really desperately want, but try and realize it as quickly as possible.
Don't wait till you're 60 to work it out.
Don't wait until there's a big cash injection from a pension or something like that to figure it out, because you would have run out of time. Or if you are at that level when you've got all this stuff that's making you unhappy, or like, oh, the bill for the car and the bill for this and the bill and the payment for a holiday.
Even if you're earning big money, you still can feel that way.
Whatever budget you're in, you can be at the maximum of your threshold. Then I encourage to take one thing away.
Yeah, something we want to do on this podcast every week is set you one task to do now, immediately after the podcast. So for us, if you can't handle the truth, you're not going to do this thing. But those of you in pursuit of it, just as we are, we want you to do this one thing. So this month's task is we want you to be looking through your bank accounts and find one thing, just one, because it's a domino effect. Remember that? One thing that you can reduce. So whether that's your Costa Coffee spend, whether that's subscription, something that you don't really watch.
Yeah, well, I encourage you just to go through your bills and see where your money's going. I think, like, real practical advice, like, this is where I would start for anyone that's really, like, at the beginning of this journey, for example, is just print out the last 3 months' bank statements and go through it line by line. You probably don't even know where your money's going. I didn't. You didn't. Go through it, itemize it, figure out, look, actually, I spent, I did this with a friend, for example. I'll give it as an example. I did this with a friend who, was struggling a bit of money, and we worked out he was spending £195 a month on Costa Coffees. That's £200 a month. You know what I mean? Like, you can buy an espresso machine and gear yourself up for 60 quid for like 2 months worth of coffees, and it's way better, by the way. That isn't a plug for Nespresso, but kind of is.
Why not? We like it.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, so like £200 a month over the course of a year just on coffee. Yeah. Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
And even if you can reduce that by 50%, I'm not even telling you can't get coffees, but reduce it by half and find a cheaper way.
Yeah, for sure.
You'll feel great about it. And then that will not spur you on to do the next thing.
Yeah.
And the next thing and next thing. If you are unaware of where your money's going, you have no idea. You have no chance of rectifying it. That's what.
Yeah, and then you'll also think, but I will be happy when. So stop the cost of coffees. I will be happy when I get that 7-figure business, when I take that first 10 grand a month. But we just assure you, remember this podcast, that isn't the case. It won't be the case. It's all a lot of it's your internal work and how you're feeling about your life, and that, make it stress-free, more freedom and more peace. That is where that's the real freedom flex.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's a lifelong pursuit. It's going to take a long time to really figure this out. Experience is probably going to dictate 90% or 99% of how you move forward. So you've really helped me actually along that journey of you were way more assertive,
out of control with money.
Okay, yeah,
I
was trying to say it in a nice way.
This is the truth. Don't be nice.
You were much
no, I wasn't.
more
I was
shit
out of
with
control.
money. No,
I'd spend it, so I was like, get the M4, buy the M4.
But to be fair, it did actually have a positive, and the positive was I wouldn't have traditionally done that before, so I would have put it on a pedestal and be like, when I've got enough, I would get it.
That would have been your life pursuit, to get the M4. Got it at 60 and been like, this is shit.
Well, not necessarily in maybe the life, but it may have taken another 3 or 4 years. And that still may have been like a real thing I idolized. Now I've shortcutted that. I can get rid of it and kind of move on. And maybe in a couple of years' time, I'll buy another one, but maybe I won't.
Yeah.
So there has been some benefits to that behavior.
Yeah.
But again, it's like I was saying, it's a lifelong pursuit. Experience as much as you can, and you'll figure it out by feeling your way. Like, there's nothing that we will say or anything you will listen to that's going to really change it, but asking the right questions is a good place to start.
Ask the right questions, experience it for yourself, and as you said, take this one small step today. Go through your bank account, Find that thing that you're spending your money on, reduce it, get rid of it, and watch it snowball. And watch also you feel this new freedom where you haven't got to live up to this lifestyle. Pay for these things you don't want to have to pay for. That's what we want to see you do. Drop us comments, let us know how you get on with it. Any other topics for next month, also let us know. It's been great always is talking. We'll have another conversation about something else on the way home, as we always do. But thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll see you at next month's Homes Truths.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you next month.